It's been a while since we talked about SCPs over here on Top 5 Scary. As we know, the SCP Foundation is responsible for locating and containing individuals, entities, locations, and objects that violate natural law. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scariest SCP monsters that should stay locked up. Coming in at number 5, SCP-049. SCP-049 is a humanoid entity roughly 1.9 meters in height, which bears the appearance of a medieval plague doctor. And those dudes are utterly terrifying. While SCP-049 appears to be wearing the thick robes and the ceramic mask indicative of the plague doctor, the garments instead seem to have grown out of its body over time and are now indistinguishable from whatever form is beneath them. 049 is capable of speech in a variety of languages, though tends to prefer English or medieval French. While 049 is typically cordial and cooperative with Foundation staff, it can become especially irritated or at times outright aggressive if it feels that it is in the presence of what it calls the pestilence. The exact nature of this pestilence is currently unknown to Foundation researchers. It does seem to be an issue of immense concern to 049 though. 049 will become hostile with individuals it sees as being affected by the pestilence, often having to be restrained should it encounter such. If left unchecked, 049 will generally attempt to kill any such individual. 049 is capable of causing all biological functions of an organism to cease through direct skin contact. How this occurs is currently unknown. Now 049 is contained within a standard secure humanoid containment cell in Research Sector 02 at Site 19, and it must be sedated before any attempts to transport it, and during transport it must be secured within a Class 3 humanoid restriction harness and monitored by no fewer than 2 armed guards. Here is hoping it stays there for as long as possible, because it would be bad news bears if this creature escaped. In at number 4, SCP-3626. SCP-3626 is a message that you might be reading right now. Persons who open 3626 will be transported to a pocket dimension, or otherwise separated from the outside world. All living beings within the line of sight will disappear. The details of this are unclear, as when affected subjects attempt to view objects different from the device currently displaying 3626 on, they will suffer hallucinations. These hallucinations may differ in nature, but they are sometimes connected with traumatic events from the subject's past, and often follow Moloch-class love-inducing anomalous vision patterns. Affected subjects are advised to avoid looking away from the screen. The influence is visible in the JPEG files. Do not stop listening to what I am saying. Now, the hallucinogenic properties of SCP-3626 make it difficult for subjects to leave their immediate area because they see things they shouldn't see. However, subjects who have managed to do so have found all the doors or windows barred and were unable to leave the room they were in when they first accessed 3626, trapped alone with their thoughts, paranoid that something is out to get them. There is nothing though, only your thoughts, only you. Now, it is unknown what happens when the hallucinatory effects are allowed to progress beyond the distortion point, due to the fact that no documentation for it is provided in 3626. It is assumed that the affected subject is unable to cancel the effects of the anomaly beyond this point. If 3626 is forwarded to another individual via electronic mail, the effects will cease, kind of like The Ring. This is implied by the fact that no edits were made by individuals claiming to have forwarded the message. Now, whatever you do, do not seek out the message and do not look at the JPEG file. It will drive you to madness and transport you to an alternate dimension. Unless you like the sound of that. It's where I am right now. I read the message. Look at me. In at number 3, SCP-2700. SCP-2700 is a device originally constructed by Nikola Tesla with the purpose of producing a directed energy weapon. Investigation of the artifact while in Foundation custody, however, has proven that SCP-2700 possesses a function, distinct form, and is significantly more dangerous than its original designs. 2700 is contained in a vault that is 180 meters from the surface level entrance to a secure bunker. The vault itself is to be insulated against seismic seismic activity and safeguarded by 3 sets of reinforced steel doors. Access to the vault is forbidden, barring semi-hourly inspection, unless there is a risk of imminent containment failure, and contingency procedures are necessary. All personnel entering the vault are to be equipped with batroxine collars, which are to be activated for any breach of protocol. Now, the luminescent anomaly located in the center of SCP-27003 is not plasma as previously indicated, but a discrete energy phenomena, now designated SCP-2700 Omega. Omega behaves inversely with regards to entropy. The energy state within it, its boundaries constantly move from the thermal equilibrium to thermal singularity, from disorganized to organized. In other words, the flow of energy moves from the state of maximum entropy to minimal entropy, which is opposite to the standard for the rest of the universe. Now here's where things get terrifying. I quote, "If SCP-2700 Omega were to escape the interior of SCP-2703, an inexorable chain reaction would occur, converting the rest of the universe to this inverted entropic state. The eventuality of this scenario would be a YK-class entropic annihilation event, resulting in the reduction of the entire universe to an infinitely energetic singularity. Essentially, it would be an inverted Big Bang." Yeah, you can see why this monster should never ever be released. It's terrifying. Coming in at number 2, SCP-055. SCP-055 is a self-keeping secret, or anti-meme. Information about 055's appearance as well as its nature, behavior, and origins is self-classifying. To clarify, I quote, "How Site-19 acquired SCP-055 is unknown. When 055 was obtained and by whom is unknown. 055's physical appearance is unknown. It is indescribable or invisible. Individuals are perfectly capable of entering 055's containment and observing it, taking mental or written notes, making sketches, taking photographs, and even making audio-video recordings. An extensive log of such observations is on file. However, information about 055's physical appearance leaks out of a human mind soon after such an observation. Individuals tasked with describing 055 after hours find their minds wandering and lose interest in the task. Individuals tasked with sketching a copy of a photograph are unable to remember what the photograph looks like, as are researchers overseeing these tests. Security personnel who have observed 055 via closed-circuit television cameras emerge after a full shift, exhausted and effectively amnesiac about the events of the previous hours. Now 055 is kept within a 5x5 by 2.5 meter square room constructed of cement, with a Faraday cage surrounding the cement walls. Security guards are not to be posted outside of 055's room. It is further advised that all personnel maintaining or studying other SCPs in the vicinity try to maintain a distance of at least 50 meters from the geometric center of the room. At least one attempt has been made to destroy 055 or possibly move it from containment at Site-19 to another site, meeting failure for reasons unknown. Essentially, this creature is so vague yet so powerful it should never ever be released. However, if it were to be released or even escape, you would have no idea about it because your memory would be erased. That's pretty terrifying. And finally, coming in at number 1, SCP-610. Initial reports of SCP-610 came direct from the Russian government through undisclosable channels. Their reports consisted primarily of disappearances of farmers in the region and were not considered until the local police, followed by the regional police, and finally a government dispatched agent all failed to report in within a 72-hour period. So what exactly happened? What is SCP-610? 610 appears to be a contagious skin disease, at first with symptoms including rash, itching, and increased skin sensitivity. Within 3 hours, the disease will cause blemishes resembling heavy scar tissue to form in the chest and arm areas, spreading to the legs and to the back within an additional hour, consuming the victim completely within 5 hours. It is also noted that exposure to higher temperatures vastly decreases time for the contagion to spread, and completed infections have been recorded occurring in as little as 5 minutes. Due to the vast area of infection 610 covers, containment for the creature is absolutely impossible. Isolation of the area has proved far more effective though, and permission has been granted by the Russian government to establish a perimeter to keep people out of these areas under the guise of military operations. Now here's where things get spooky. Should any organism show traits consistent with 610, it is to be engaged at range with small arms until immobile, then dispatched producing incendiary weapons and munitions from as great a distance as possible. Any living thing coming in physical contact with an organism infected with 610 is considered expendable and is to be immediately terminated and incinerated. Essentially, if this creature escapes, it will screw up the entire world as we know it.
Starting off our list at number 5, we have SCP-682. The flesh-hating, life-ending reptile 682 is probably one of the most well-known SCPs going. You'd be hard-pressed to find a list detailing the most dangerous, scary, or hard-to-kill entries without 682. To this day, there has been no confirmed method of killing it, and there are a lot of experiment logs chronicling the attempts to do so. A lot. This large, vaguely reptile-like creature of unknown origin is extremely intelligent and has actually been seen engaging in complex communication with a sentient supercomputer. There'd probably be more reports of this type of communication if 682 didn't hate all life. When asked why it killed a group of farmers, it gave its now iconic rationale: through its destroyed throat, they were disgusting. With high levels of strength, speed, and reflexes, all displayed through various interactions with other SCPs, this lizard is a force to be reckoned with. It can gain energy by ingesting anything, organic or inorganic, and its physical body grows and changes very quickly by consuming or shedding material. On top of all this, 682 has regenerative powers previously unheard of. It has been seen moving and speaking with over 80% of its body destroyed or rotted away. Although the base entry for 682 is very simple with a whole lot of edgy energy, it remains an iconic and beloved SCP. The extensive experiment logs and stories associated with the entry pit 682 against all sorts of other fascinating SCPs with various results. One of my personal favorite interactions is between 682 and a certain squishy SCP, but we'll get to that in a bit. It really is hard to imagine the Foundation without our favorite invincible lizard. Coming in at number 4, SCP-055. I want to believe that this is one of the best SCPs from Series 1, but if I'm being honest with you, there's no way for me to know for sure. Really, I have no idea how to describe where this one fits in. It's not that 055 is indescribable or invisible, no, nothing like that. I just really can't remember that much about it. Somebody was telling me that it was Keter, I think. Sounds about right, doesn't it? But for real, this one has far-reaching implications that seem to multiply the longer you think about it. SCP-055 is an anti-meme, or a self-keeping secret. This means that information about its appearance, nature, behavior, and origin is self-classifying. Again, it is observable. People can look at it, take notes, shoot photos, even video record it. But once they leave the containment chamber, any information will just leak right out of their brains. When questioned about 055, individuals who have previously been exposed will lose interest and claim to be unable to remember anything about the interaction. Containment procedures and even the general purpose of the containment chamber are unknown. This chamber is actually quite easily accessed, but on-site personnel will claim no knowledge of its existence. This is periodically rediscovered, of course, and this usually leads to a great deal of alarm. This state of concern will only last a couple minutes before being forgotten though. 055 may present a major physical threat and could very well have killed hundreds of personnel, and we would never know it. Even if it is physically harmless, there is a major mental threat involved as well. Compared to a lot of the other Series 1 entries, 055 is a very nebulous, existential threat. We could all be under its influence and we would not even know. We wouldn't even know that it was possible to not know. What was I talking about again? What number are we on? Right. Number 3. SCP-106. The Rotten Old Man. No, not your next door neighbor. SCP-106 is an elderly humanoid with the general appearance of advanced decomposition. While not exceptionally agile, this monster will incapacitate prey by damaging major organs, muscle groups, or tendons before pulling them into its pocket dimension. It has been observed remaining motionless for days, even months, before beginning its hunting behaviors. Foundation members aren't totally sure why it remains dormant for so long, but some speculate that it is a lulling tactic meant to draw prey in before it attacks. 106 also causes a corrosion effect in any and all solid matter it touches. This can take the form of rusting, rotting, and cracking, plus it leaves behind a sort of black, mucousy substance. This goop is particularly detrimental to living tissues and is thought to be a pre-digestion action, just getting you ready to be consumed. If the ability to decompose all it touches wasn't bad enough, this elderly gentleman can also pass through solid matter matter, basically disappearing until it decides it wants to manifest in our world again. This is how it enters its pocket dimension, where it will then play with its captured prey. 106 seems to hunt based on desire and not hunger, and it will collect multiple prey objects and keep many alive in the pocket dimension for extended periods of time. Limited observation in the space-time anomaly has described it as being comprised mostly of halls and rooms, and nobody's sure if it's something that was created by the SCP or if it's where it spawned in the first place. The decrepit old man also appears to have full control over time, space, and perception inside this dimension. This man has Kamui, huh? Now, all these powers make SCP-106 very hard to contain, but get this. The Foundation will keep it relatively sedate by using a very disturbing containment procedure. At the end of a long period of dormancy, 106 will begin to move again. So the Foundation will jump into action and periodically leave some bait inside an unused containment cell. This bait is more often than not a human aged 10 to 25, which will then be majorly injured by Foundation staff. Once sufficiently hurt, the cries of the human will be broadcast via PA, and usually within 10 to 15 minutes, 106 will appear and snatch up its latest victim. Then, hopefully, within that containment cell, it will enter dormancy once again. What a perfect illustration of the brutal methods employed by the Foundation. Keeps the world safe though, right? Thank goodness for amnestics. Filling out our number 2 slot, we have SCP-835. I think this is one of the more well-written SCPs in Series 1. The original entry has plenty of expunged data, but that is elaborated upon in some revised reports. The uncensored after-action report is an extremely effective short horror story on its own, even without the added context of the original report. I would highly recommend checking out the full entry. SCP-835 is a large mass of coral polyps weighing many tons. How many tons? I don't know. While incapable of locomotion, this is a very strong and dangerous SCP. It will anchor itself using large tentacles projected from its polyps and can actually damage plate steel with these extremities. The coral itself is extremely hard, requiring the use of high-powered diamond drills to collect even small samples. It grows at an extremely accelerated rate, adding up to 50 pounds of mass each day. Foundation members are to feed it only at regularly scheduled intervals to prevent excessive growth. Oddly enough, this aquatic anomaly is made up of basic human biological components. The shell is formed from super dense calcium, the caps that cover the polyps are coated with tooth enamel, and the tentacles appear to be formed from mutated human tongue cells. Most human biological systems are also present in this weird mouth thing, although most are extremely mutated. The digestive and reproductive systems remain intact and are actually linked together. Feces and reproductive fluids are collected and ejected from the same chamber, kinda like a bird's cloaca. A gross human octopus coral bird thing. Nice. Anything that comes into contact with this mortifying mixture will undergo a variety of terrifying physical changes, eventually culminating in assimilation with 835. There is no known treatment to reverse these effects, and even attempting to damage or kill those under the influence of the splooge is a bad idea. If you strike it with enough force to crack it open, the slurry would spread anyways, causing additional infection. Like 106, there is no real way to contain this monstrosity, so the Foundation keeps it sedate by feeding it a human every once in a while. Some claim that you can see the faces of all of 835's victims within its openings. Nightmarish, to say the least. And finally at number 1, SCP-999. Of course, there is no other possible choice for the number 1 spot. The final entry in Series 1, SCP-999, is a lovable, vivacious slime. This orange gelatinous mass is absolutely adorable and just makes everyone's day a little bit better. Playful and dog-like SCP-999 will react with overwhelming elation when approached. It will slither over to and jump upon the nearest person, hugging them with pseudopods while gurgling and cooing. This peanut buttery blob often emits different pleasant odors ranging from chocolate to fresh laundry to even Play-Doh. Anyone who comes in contact with 999 will experience immediate mild euphoria, which will intensify as exposure goes on. It'll interact with anyone, but has a special interest in those who are unhappy or hurt in any way. Persons suffering from depression or PTSD have reported having a more positive outlook after multiple slime sessions. This little blob of goo loves all animals, especially humans. In fact, it even refuses to eat meat and will risk its life to save others. It took a bullet for someone once. Literally the MVP. Give this lad all the candy and sweets it wants. Which, incidentally, is all it eats. M&M's and Necco wafers are its favorite. But whatever you do, don't feed it caffeine though. You ever see a kid on a can of Coca-Cola? Nobody needs that. If all the facts I've already stated weren't enough to convince you of the life-altering happiness this slime ball can bring, consider this. At one point, it was brought in to see SCP-682. The Foundation wanted to see if 999 could curb its omnicidal rage. 682 was observed stating aloud how happy it was over and over again before falling asleep. We'll just ignore the laughter wave and concurrent slaughter that happened afterwards. So if this squishy fellow can make the most life-despising creature on dear sweet planet Earth chill out for a little while, imagine what it could do for you. He's my little pal and there's nothing you can say to change my mind.
Coming in at 5, SCP-1000. SCP-1000 is a nocturnal omnivorous ape ranging in size from 5 to 10 feet in height and weighs between 200 to 600 pounds. They typically have grey, brown, black, red or occasionally white fur. They possess large eyes with good vision, a pronounced brow ridge and a sagittal crest on the forehead similar to that of the gorilla. Their intelligence is said to be on par with the common chimpanzee. SCP-1000 has evolved alongside humans, existing contemporaneously with proto-humans and humans in large numbers until 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, when an extinction event eliminated all but 1 to 5% of their population. This event was triggered by SCP-1000 contracting an anomalous pseudo-disease classified as SCP-1000-F1. This disease is passed on at the genetic level and affects every present-day instance of SCP-1000. The majority of SCP-1000 instances are born immune to the effect. Those who are not born immune quickly die. Now the effect of 1000-F1 is as follows. Any humanoid that directly or indirectly observes any instance of SCP-1000 has a minimum of 2% chance of being instantly killed through anomalous means via permanent cessation of brain function. Because of SCP-1000's close relation to humanity, it is considered likely that SCP-1000-F1 could eventually transfer to human carriers. All media reports related to 1000 are to be examined for potential verifiability. All organizations and individuals investigating SCP-1000's existence are to be kept under surveillance by Mobile Task Force Zeta-1000 and discredited or administered amnestics. Coming in at 4, SCP-3310. SCP-3310 is a 9-meter tall tree stump floating in Crater Lake. It is anomalously able to float upright with approximately 1.2 meters of the top remaining above the water at any given time. If removed from the water and returned, SCP-3310 will return to its position. 3310 floats around Crater Lake as a result of non-anomalous weather patterns. The restriction of this movement causes 2 distinct and possibly linked anomalous phenomena. The first phenomena is the manifestation of anomalous weather patterns around Crater Lake. The nature and intensity of these weather patterns have varied between different activation events, but generally appear to target or especially impede our second instance. The second phenomena is the manifestation of several unknown entities in the area surrounding Crater Lake. The exact nature of these instances has varied with each activation event of SCP-3310, but have generally been described as dark grey translucent forms. As a result of the inability to remove 3310 from Crater Lake, containment must be focused on the prevention of activation events caused by the impediment of SCP-3310's movement. 3310 is to never be removed from the lake, and if its movement ever becomes restricted, it is to be released or returned to Crater Lake immediately. Coming in at 3, SCP-2000. 2000 is a subterranean Foundation installation originally constructed for the purpose of reconstructing civilization in the event that a K-class end-of-the-world scenario could not be averted in time to prevent humanity's extinction. Since its inception, 2000 has been activated at least twice. Foundation records regarding SCP-2000's construction and history prior to this assumed first use have been lost. Now, whether this information blackout is the result of accident or design is impossible to determine. Utilizing an underground Romanian transit pipe to collect raw material from various hot springs and underground magma flows in the area, and a computer memory bank housing data on all known human alias, this system is capable of recreating any lost human genome or generating as many new and unique genomes as necessary to repopulate human civilization. Humans produced by by this process can be advanced to any age desired without extending the 5-day incubation period. The entrance to SCP-2000 is disguised as a disused park ranger station in Yellowstone National Park. Despite several civilian trespassing attempts, the entrance has yet to be breached in the installation's recorded history, and no further physical containment has been deemed necessary. Coming in at 2, SCP-1440. 1440 is a man of unknown ethnicity and age. When questioned about its name, place, or time of birth, 1440 will refuse to answer, although it is unclear if this is due to the subject being unwilling to share this information or not possessing it. Though the subject's appearance is that of an old man, it has not shown any signs of aging in the 50 years since first coming to the attention of the Foundation. SCP-1440's anomalous nature becomes apparent once it comes into contact with human population or man-made objects and remains in contact with them for longer than a few days. 1440 has an acute adverse effect on everything connected to humanity. Now, prolonged exposure of any man-made object or person to it will cause increasingly destructive events to occur in SCP-1440's vicinity, until the destruction or death of said human element. The only exceptions to this are SCP-1440 itself and its belongings, including clothes, a sack, a pack of playing cards, and a small glass. Now, the one good thing about this SCP is that it seems to be aware of its effect on human populations, and will in turn attempt to avoid coming into contact with the human population. 1440 is currently uncontained and location unknown since its last containment breach. Due to the nature of 1440, the Foundation may not have the means to contain it without risking an unacceptable loss of resources and personnel. And finally, coming in at number 1, SCP-3812. 3812 is a reality-altering entity that is nearly impossible to describe in any meaningful way. All that is known about this SCP is that it was once Sam Howell, a non-anomalous African-American human being who was believed to have died in 1996. Now, sometime after his death, SCP-3812 was observed rising out of its grave and disappearing. The SCP was brought to the Foundation's attention after its presence resulted in the demolition of an entire apartment building in Warsaw, Poland. However, due to its capabilities and varying appearance, it is impossible to contain and near impossible to track. It is said that 3812 exhibits signs of advanced schizophrenia, specifically extreme paranoia, extreme dysphoria, extreme mania, depression, inability to properly perceive their surroundings, inability to discern the difference between the real and imagined, inability to differentiate between the living and dead beings, inability to control expressions of emotion, hearing voices that are not there, seeing things that are not there, feeling or otherwise experiencing stimuli that do not exist. Over time, SCP-3812 has become significantly less humanoid in appearance, and is now only vaguely humanoid and occasionally manifests in a variety of shapes and appearances. Additionally, 3812 produces a latent anomalous effect on local reality, specifically in the form of temporal and spatial distortion surrounding the entity. These distortions are occasionally accompanied by random violent outbursts that may dramatically shift or damage local space and time. 3812 is to be constantly monitored by Mobile Task Force Ganymede 66 Starlight Knights, who are to maintain a 5-kilometer quarantined area of exclusion around the SCP. Coming in at number 5, SCP-054-FR. 054-FR is a phenomenon occurring in some waves off the western coasts as well as some eastern coasts. It is characterized by the physical transformation of effective waves to resemble the jaws of a great white shark. This SCP is capable of remaining unnoticed until it is almost too late to act. It is capable of forming on waves at least 4 meters tall, but the maximum height of which it can reach is unknown. Effective waves are capable of rolling at 3 times the speed of non-effective waves if a non-aquatic animal of a human being is situated between SCP-054 and the closest coast. Appearances of this SCP are growing considerably if the previously evoked individuals are situated at a distance of at least 250 meters from the coast, whether they are swimmers, divers, or aquatic vehicles of moderate size, with the most common victims having been surfers. Injuries caused by SCP-054 are similar to that which could be accomplished by a great white shark, but with the pressure being directly proportional to the height of the effective wave. Injuries in 68% of cases occur during the collapse of the wave over the victim. Reported injuries have been as simple as a removed limb to total disappearance of the victim. The only method of avoiding injury is to dive under the wave before impact. An exclusion zone has been established around all shorelines where an occurrence of SCP-054-FR have been observed. Only personnel with a clearance level of 3 or higher may enter the containment zones, and only for experimental purposes. Access is forbidden to any and all civilians under the pretext of conducting research on a population of marine animals. Sneaky stuff, this is why I don't go in the ocean, ever. There's something lurking. Coming in at number 4, SCP-3389. SCP-3389 is a man-made lake located in the northeastern United States near the town of blank, Pennsylvania. Any human being entering SCP-3389 will, after a variable amount of time, not exceeding 10 minutes, be pulled beneath the surface of the water regardless of the depth at which they were standing. A few minutes after being submerged, a statue of the subject's exact likeness will rise from the water in their place. These statues are unremarkable beyond their anomalous origin, consisting of a synthetic resin and concrete mixture and giving color by standard household latex paint. Upon discovery by the Foundation, there were at least 47 of these statues scattered around the lake, all in various states of decay. 13 currently remain, including that of a Dr. Blank. It is currently unknown how many instances are present prior to containment. Speaking of containment, all building, private and public land in a 10-kilometer radius around SCP-3389 have been purchased by the Foundation and designated Provisional Site 91. All roads and pedestrian pathways leading to the SCP are to be cordoned off and maintain a patrol of armed guards. An electrified chain link fence topped with barbed wire has been erected in the immediate vicinity surrounding 3389. 8 guard towers, each occupied by no less than 2 armed Foundation personnel and equipped with security cameras, have been erected to watch over the SCP at all times. Back to the statue though, if any instances of the statue's collapse, personnel stationed in the surrounding guard towers are to terminate any emerging statues instantly. No entities emerging from the lake are to reach beyond the chain link fence. If any personnel are apprehended by an instance of SCP-3389, every attempt is to be made to terminate them before they can be pulled into the water. Coming in at number 3, SCP-4217. 4217 refers to both the Bismarck, an anomalous German battleship sunk in 1941, and the large cephalopod organism that is fused to the inside of its hull. SCP-4217-B possesses a pair of octopoid eyes which protrude from the base of SCP-4217-A's superstructure and 12 100 to 200 meter long muscular hydrostats that extend from an opening in the stern. Now, aside from the presence of SCP-4217-B, SCP-4217-A shows no signs whatsoever of damage sustained from battle or subsequent decades submerged underwater. B seemingly operates A's systems. This includes its full armament of 8 main guns, 44 secondary guns, and 12 anti-aircraft guns. B also can operate A's propellers to reach speeds approaching 40 knots, but only while surfaced. This is way too much power for a creature to have and could be incredibly detrimental if you piss it off. While submerged, SCP-4217 achieves locomotion via ejection of water from B's body cavity. Typically, this SCP remains submerged at a depth of 500 to 1100 meters, navigating its territory. However, the SCP will periodically surface and enter a hostile state. During this period, it will seek and attack non-threatening targets. Now, Foundation naval forces are to patrol the SCP's territory with 3 or more battleships under the guise of the British Royal Navy. During a hostile state, naval forces are to engage with the SCP until it reverts to a passive state. Survivors from civilian vessels attacked by the SCP are to be recovered and processed in accordance with maritime disinformation protocols. Coming in at number 2, SCP-1128. SCP-1128 is an entity that manifests as a massive aquatic predator to anyone given a full description of the being's appearance through either spoken, written descriptions, or visual depictions of the being. Persons infected by SCP-1128 will initially exhibit no abnormal behavior, though some cases show a general aversion to activities involving bodily immersion in water such as bathing or swimming. Should subjects become fully immersed in water, they will disappear completely under the surface of the water, regardless of the water's actual depth. In most cases, they will reappear moments later in a panicked state and frantically try to leave the water. However, in other cases, the water will become polluted with blood and debris, confirmed to be the remains of the subject. That sucks. The subjects that reappear intact claim that they were transported to a vast ocean where they were pursued by SCP-1128. Interviews with the surviving subjects carry further contamination, as descriptions of the being's appearance trigger further infections. Yikes. Written description or imagery of the SCP's appearance or videos of the entity breaching found outside of the Foundation are to be destroyed, and Class C amnestics are to be administered to anyone exposed to such information or showing signs of the SCP's contamination. A written description of the entity's appearance is to be kept at site blank for experimental purposes only and is not to be read by anyone other than D-Class used for testing. If exposed, staff are to report immediately for administration of Class C amnestics. And finally, coming in at number 1, SCP-3000. SCP-3000 is a massive aquatic serpentine entity strongly resembling a giant moray eel. The exact length of 3000 is impossible to determine, however it is believed to be somewhere around 600 and 900 kilometers, with the head of SCP-3000 measuring roughly 2.5 meters in diameter, and sections of the body proper being around 10 meters in diameter. Yeah, horrifying. Now 3000 is typically a sedentary creature, only moving its head in response to certain stimuli or during feeding. The majority of its body is located around the Ganges fan and rarely moves at all. SCP-3000 is carnivorous and despite its sedentary nature is capable of moving quickly to dispatch prey, aka us if we were ever to encounter it. Despite its size, it is believed that SCP-3000 does not require sustenance to maintain its biological functions, aka it kills for the hell of it. When 3000 consumes prey, a thin layer of viscous, dark grey substance classified as Y909 is excreted from its skin, with the end result of its digestive processes currently unknown. In some historical records, Dr. Eugene Getz reports on SCP-3000, I quote, "The unease was felt throughout the entire crew as we descended on that first night. Whether this was due to our uncertainty at what we would discover or something more sinister, I would not speculate. At around 0940 hours, we first observed the head of the entity. The unease was palpable now. Several other crew members complained of feeling hazy and of being uncertain what they were supposed to be doing. When we were within 50 meters, the entity turned slowly to look at us. Even now, as I recall watching this thing coil around in the darkness, I can still hear Williams barking like a mad dog in the rear of the vessel, screaming and flailing, shouting about how he could see it in his head. Frightening stuff. The area containing SCP-3000, currently a region of the Bay of Bengal, roughly 300 kilometers in diameter, is to be routinely patrolled by Foundation naval vessels. Under no circumstances are civilians allowed to attempt deep-sea exploration or diving efforts in the quarantined area. Individuals believed to have contacted SCP-3000 are to be contained, quarantined, and processed at Site-151. Sadly, there is currently no known cure for exposure to 3000. As such, affected individuals should be contained and quarantined for further evaluation. Awful.